All right, welcome back. We're going to finish Iran today. So last time we were talking about was basically the Iranian Revolution. The Shah's deposed, and he leaves Iran in order to seek medical treatment for the United States. Many people think he stole millions of dollars, oil money, and went and took all that money with him. So he's charged with treason, and they would like him to be returned back to Iran in order to stand trial. The current president of the time period is Jimmy Carter, and Jimmy Carter is not going to make the Shah to be returned to Iran. So basically what ends up happening is a group of irate students are going to storm the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, and they're going to take more than 60 American hostages. Again, since the 1908 discovery of oil, this area is going to become the basic center of all of our foreign affairs. The British, the Soviet Union, the French are all trying to establish positive relationships with Iran in order to maintain or gain access to oil. And until 1953, the U.S. had actually advocated for an independent Iran controlled by the Shah because we controlled the Shah. We had supported him in his coup attempt, and he had won. And again, remember, he had promised afterwards that he would be allied with the United States. We are going to also try to support our second puppet government under Mohammad Mossadegh. And again, we are going to support him. We support the creation of the Iranian intelligence force, which commits all kinds of atrocities. And we actually are going to hear President Carter in a speech right before this event actually happens call Iran the island of stability in a troubled Middle East. Shortly thereafterwards, we see the storming of the embassy, and students are going to be seized. Students are going to seize the embassy, but at first their goals are relatively unclear. The Iranian embassy actually had been seized a few months earlier than this, but only held for a few hours. The Ayatollah actually had told the students to release everybody and to leave the embassy, which they do and listen to. After the U.S. admits the Shah in for medical treatment, the Ayatollah is going to support the students maintaining control of the embassy. He calls the U.S. embassy the den of spies from America. And the hostages are not going to be released until the Shah is going to be returned for trial, again, for all the money that he supposedly has stolen. All right, so we're in a bad situation. President Carter is in a really bad situation. This is our first hostage situation ever in American history, and we want to make sure that U.S. citizens are not going to be used to achieve a political goal. We don't want to encourage other groups to take other groups of Americans to be hostages. As a result of that, Carter and the U.S. government decide that they are not going to negotiate with hostages. They're not going to give in to any demands, and we are then going to impose a trade embargo against Iranian oil. We are going to see that the hostage takers, the students and their leaders, are eventually going to release some of the hostages. So they're going to end up releasing anyone that's considered to be non-U.S. citizen, all females, and any African Americans that were inside the embassy are going to be released, which is then going to leave 53 Americans still remaining in custody. The number of the hostages is going to become release of the hostages becomes priority number one. It's always on the news. People are going to tie yellow ribbons around their trees. It's going to be something that it's talked about, and the count just sort of continues every day. Day 1, day 2, day 50, day 60, day 300, day 400. So every time you turn on the news, you're seeing more and more about the hostages are still there. The hostages are still there, and it's going to lead the American population to start to ask and question what is Jimmy Carter actually doing about it. So what did Carter do about it? He did try to have a secret mission in order to rescue the hostages. It's called Operation Eagle Claw, and it was an elite rescue team that was formed. And the idea, however, was they were going to have a series of helicopters go in. The helicopters will then use machine guns and fight the people up. They drop down, get the hostages, and leave. However, there is going to be a sandstorm. And so during the sandstorm, several of the helicopters actually going to malfunction. You've got 8 U.S. servicemen that are going to be killed. And as a result of this, all future attempts to rescue the hostages are going to be stopped. Again, constant media coverage of the Iranian hostage crisis is a major concern and a major issue for the 1980 U.S. presidential election. Carter is seen as an inefficient president because he has not been able to negotiate the release of the hostages. The other side of it, the Republican candidate Ronald Reagan is not constrained by the government, and he's actually going to be able, along with members of the Canadian government, to negotiate the hostage release. Reagan is going to win the election by a landslide, and then shortly thereafter, the hostages are going to be released. All right, next, we are going to have a war with Iran. All right, so Saddam Hussein, who's going to be the leader of Iraq, is going to be really, really nervous about the Iranian Revolution and also the Iranian hostage crisis. It is way too close to his country. So he's really, really concerned that things may start to boil over and he may lose his position inside of Iraq. He thinks that Iran is distracted because of the change in government and the revolution, and then dealing with the United States and the oil embargo. And maybe this is his opportunity to go in and conquer Iran and be able to actually gain all of this oil. There are several differences between Iran and Iraq that's going to basically lead to this war, and basically it's a religious divide. Saddam Hussein, Sunni, a socialist, pro-Soviet. He's going to crack down on Shiites inside of his country, and is going to also want to dominate the region since Egypt signs the Camp David Accords. On the other side of it, in Iran, it is again the only Shia country in the world. It's anti-socialist, it's pro-Western, and it called Hussein anti-Islamic, who should be overthrown. And also, it does want the Iranian Revolution to spread across the rest of the Islamic world. We have these clashes between these two countries, basically about fundamental differences, but you're also going to see issues that are going to go dealing with a waterway. So the Shatt al-Arab is going to be a waterway that's going to be dominated and then is going to be supposedly returned to Iran in a treaty in 1975. Both sides are going to see the support of other nations, and they're going to fight over this war. So again, war over oil and war over the access of a waterway. So in terms of the Iranian supporters, you're going to have Syria, China, Libya, North Korea, and Israel are going to side with Iran. This is the first time Israel gets involved in an international conflict here and supports another Middle Eastern country. But it's believed that Iraq is more of a threat than a large number of Jews living inside of Israel. On the other side of it, you've got the Iraqi supporter. Most of the Gulf states are going to support Iraq, and they're viewed Iran as a larger danger. They are afraid of the spread of Shiites, and basically Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Egypt, Jordan, the United States, France, and the Soviet Union are all going to side with Iraq. The major concern was that one side would emerge as a dominant power and control the Persian Gulf with all of its oil, and basically threaten the security of all of our weaker countries in the Middle East, the West, and Asian countries dependent upon Gulf oil. Iraq is going to seize a large portion of southern Iran, but Iran is going to recapture the land very, very quickly. Saddam Hussein is going to offer the end to the war, but the Ayatollah Khomeini is going to demand that Iraq pay them war reparations and a change in the Iraqi government. So he wants Khomeini out of power. Obviously, Khomeini is not going to agree to that. Iran is going to advance then into Iraq and soon becomes a war of attrition. Both of them are going to use oil as a target. Each side is going to try to destroy the enemy's ability to export oil, and this war is going to continue on and on. The impact in both countries is going to be relatively enormous. Estimated that 1.5 million people are going to be killed during the war. Eventually, a truce is going to be signed 8 years after the war is over, but nothing has been solved, which is what we're finding out with most of our Middle Eastern wars. On the side of the United States, we are going to unofficially support both sides of the war. Again, we are tightrope walking. We want to make sure that whenever the war is over or the conflict is over, we still have access to the Middle Eastern oil. So Ronald Reagan is going to secretly agree to sell weapons to Iran in exchange for the American hostages that are being now held in Lebanon. So the Iranian-Contra affair is going to be against U.S. policy because officially we do not negotiate with terrorists or hostage takers. But the Reagan administration are going to claim that they do not know anything about it because it's going to be done through a dummy company that's going to be led by Oliver North. But not only was the United States selling arms to Iran while publicly supporting Iraq, a portion of the profits from the arms sale was going to the Contra rebels who are fighting against the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. So this was sort of like a very, very, very messy situation with the United States supporting groups that publicly we said that we were not going to support. All right, so the war is going to be a very relatively long war, 8 years, and the Iranian-Iraqi war is going to last. It's going to only end with a UN ceasefire, and it does not end again with a permanent peace treaty. Saddam Hussein is going to want to have a lasting peace, but very, very quickly after this war is over, he turns his attention to Kuwait. He says that Kuwait is taking too much crude oil from a common oil field, and Saddam Hussein insists that Kuwait and Saudi Arabia are going to take an additional $30 billion worth of oil out of the field, and he wants his money back. The Egyptian president at this time period is Barak, and Mubarak is going to organize negotiations between Iraq and Kuwait to avoid Western intervention, but Hussein is going to break off those negotiations and is going to instead order the invasion of Kuwait. Arab nations are going to condemn Iraq and call for the U.S. and NATO support. The UN is going to order Iraq to immediately withdraw, but again, the U.S. is eventually going to have to step in, and we're going to initiate Operation Desert Shield with airstrikes in order to force Iraqi troops to withdraw from Kuwait. All right, so at this point in time, Saddam Hussein needs to get his country motivated to fight this war and needs to get them motivated for the sacrifices they're going to have to make in order to win. So he's going to claim that this war is an official jihad, that now they are protecting their Sunni religion against all of these other Western areas coming in, and also against anyone that is going to be Shia. So again, it's an attempt to stop Western and Shia expansion into other Arab countries. Eventually, obviously, Saddam Hussein and Kuwait are going to lose this war. He's going to be forced to sign a peace treaty with Iran, and basically, he's then going to be able to concentrate all of his efforts on Kuwait. The international task force that's there to support Kuwait is the United States, Great Britain, France, Germany, the Soviet Union, Japan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia, and they're going to send over 750,000 troops to Kuwait. Iraq is going to be supported by Jordan, Algeria, Sudan, Yemen, Tanzania, and the Palestinian Liberation Organization. And again, they are without a country, so they are. That's why it's called the PLO. The coalition eventually wants to regain control of the air in order to minimize a ground war, and that is exactly what's going to be able to happen. So with the Air Force strikes, they're going to be able to force the Kuwait army to start to retreat, the Iraqi army to start to retreat. Basically, as they are retreating, they're going to be burning the oil fields that both countries are fighting over. So they're going to be decreasing part of their own profits, but they're making sure that Kuwait does not have the economic means in order to rebuild. After the peace is settled, Saddam Hussein is going to have to recognize that Kuwait is a sovereign state. Iraq is going to be required to get rid of all their weapons of mass destruction, which includes nuclear, biological, and also chemical. Saddam Hussein is going to, however, remain in power, and that's going to end up leading to more wars. He's going to start to brutally suppress the Kurdish population inside the north and also the Shiites inside of his country as well. So lots of human rights abuses are going to be committed. The United States and also the British are going to try to control Iraqi skies with flying into various areas, into no-fly zones. They're trying to inspect things, and again, Iraqi authorities are not going to permit UN inspections to their weapons facilities. Eventually, in 2002, President George W. Bush is going to issue an ultimatum to Saddam Hussein that he either had to step down from power and leave Iraq within 48 hours, or we were going to start the Second Persian Gulf War. All right, so that's the end of the second or third. I don't remember how many I've done tonight. So that's the end of this portion, and then we'll start the next part tomorrow.